Hi, I'm Tina.
And I'm Rich.
If there's one thing we've learned in over 20 years of marriage,
It's that some days you'll feel like killing your wife.
and some days you'll feel like killing your husband.
Welcome to Love, Marry, Kill.
Hey, Rich,
Hey, Tina.
how are you?
I am doing great.
Do you think our listeners realize what we do when it's your episode? You say, Hi, I'm Rich first. And when it's my episode, do you think anyone has figured that out?
Probably not.
Like it's some big secret, but
I
it's
think
just something we do.
it just made it simpler for us because every time we would record, we'd be like, well, are you going to say it first or am I? And then we said, well, let's just do it. If it's your episode, you say it and vice versa.
All right, we're letting you in on the fourth wall today, showing you how things are done.
Breaking down that fourth wall.
One thing that happens, speaking of breaking down the fourth wall, is when we have multi-part episodes because we give our patrons early access to all the parts, we have to record the whole series within a few days of
So
each
in this
other.
case, all three parts of the Menendez case.
We're recording them still. It's Sunday, January 25th. The winter storm Fern is still going on, and we're boring. We don't have anything to talk about because we recorded yesterday, and
I didn't know the winter storm had a name.
yeah, they started naming bad winter storms a few years ago. I think I could be wrong. Maybe they've done this for a long time, but yeah,
Fern.
Fern is upon us.
Okay.
Not so bad. I mean, probably more snow than originally. They were like 1 to 3. It's probably gonna be at least 5, I would guess.
Yeah.
So we're fine.
I just don't like the long stretches of like weeks and weeks with it not getting above, 15, 20 degrees. I just like a break once in a while. That's all I would care for.
Yeah, I would love to take a walk.
Yeah.
I almost had to cancel our recording today so I could clean the house. There's something about this time of year. Everything feels grimy and dirty and dusty.
You get in these modes once in a while.
Yes. And that's your favorite, Tina, when I'm in the middle of a cleaning frenzy.
Some days when I sense that you are going down that
You just go to
road,
your
I'm just like,
office and you
oh,
close the door.
I've got some meetings. I gotta go close my door. Yeah.
Yeah, you are not the best helper when it comes to cleaning, unless I
I'm
get
an okay
grumpy.
helper.
Well, I have to tell you. I mean, I don't want to. We don't want to open too many podcast secrets here, but I get irritated when I have to do it all. But there are some things that you are very helpful with. But before we get into today's episode, I'm going to give you an opportunity to look like you're really smart, or maybe not. Do you want to give us a football prediction? Because we're
Sure.
recording.
Yeah, there are the two championship
So
games.
Super Bowl Sunday happened yesterday.
Right. When this episode is released, for most people, the Super Bowl will have been over already. But while we're recording this right now, the
There's 4 teams
NFC
left.
and AFC championship games haven't been played. I think they're starting right about now. But yes, I have put some time and I've put together a scientific prediction.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Did you know I would ask you?
Yeah, I knew.
Did I warn you? Okay.
Yeah, you warned me. So I believe the Super Bowl will be the Seahawks against the Patriots. And I believe the Seahawks will win. And the score will be 24-23. It's going to be a really close game.
Wow. All right. You heard it here.
I'm feeling quite confident.
I am going to
about that.
project it's going to be the Bears and the Lions, and the Bears are going to win 200-0.
I am going to predict that you are going to be wrong. I'm pretty confident of that.
Oh, all right. I have a couple of snacks for you.
Okay.
They're from our friend Alicia from Amarillo, Texas, who sent us that lovely package. I'm not even exaggerating. I almost ordered some beaver nuggets the other day because I was like, gosh, beaver nuggets sound really good.
Yeah.
But Alicia sent us some beaver
Oh,
nuggets.
that's
She
so
sent
nice.
us the traditional ones, which we've had before,
so
but
good.
I'm in the mood today where I could just eat this whole bag. So if you hear
I
some
think you
munching
should
during the
share.
podcast, I'll share a little. But so there's the regular ones, and then she said I've never seen these, the bold and spicy. So that's
those are
pretty
those are
exciting.
beaver nuggets too.
Yeah, these are beaver nuggets too.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I am wearing the Texas socks that Alicia sent.
That is
Thank you
so
so
nice.
much. Such a nice gift. Okay, you ready to try some beaver nuggets?
Definitely.
What did you think of the beaver nuggets?
Well, the traditional beaver nuggets are amazing as always. Such a great flavor. Just a really good treat. Bold and spicy ones were interesting.
Yeah,
Very
those were
different.
good. Yeah, I really like them.
Reminded me a little bit of Cheetos, I
Yeah,
guess.
definitely a lot like a Cheeto.
Yeah.
The traditional ones are harder and chewier, but the cheese ones were, a lot like a Cheeto. Really good flavor.
Yeah,
I give them
excellent.
both a 10 out of 10.
I'm going to give the traditional beaver nuggets a 10 out of 10. I'll give the bold and spicy a 8.5 out of 10.
Okay, well, they might disappear and go into Tina's secret snack closet.
Fair enough.
Well, thank you for coming back to part 2 of the Menendez family murders. I do want to reiterate the content warning. This episode contains discussion of murder, family violence, and allegations of sexual abuse involving minors. Listener discretion is advised. Would you like to give a summary of part 1?
I sure would. José Menendez emigrated to the United States from Cuba at 16 after Fidel Castro came into power. He descended from a long line of elite athletes and high-achieving professionals. His mother alone had won 5 Olympic gold medals. José distinguished himself as intelligent, driven, and ruthlessly ambitious. While attending Southern Illinois University, go Salukis, he met Kitty Anderson, and the two married as José began climbing the corporate ladder, amassing rapid financial success and power. Together, they cultivated the image of a driven, elite family, raising their sons, Lyle and Erik, in a home ruled by control, discipline, and extreme expectations. From a young age, the boys were pushed relentlessly in sports and academics, while warmth, safety, and emotional freedom were largely absent. As they entered their teen years, both became increasingly rebellious. Lyle was caught in a plagiarism scandal at Princeton, and the brothers were later tied to a string of burglaries. By the end of part 1, tensions had reached a breaking point when Erik confided to Lyle that the sexual abuse he suffered at his father's hands had never stopped. They felt that their parents would rather kill them than have their secrets exposed. Lyle and Erik bought 2 shotguns for protection.
Part 2 begins 24 hours before the murders. When you were giving the synopsis, you said go Salukis. Do you want to tell everyone what a Saluki is?
I don't know what a Saluki is.
Oh, you don't?
I know it's the mascot of Southern Illinois University.
It's a dog. It looks kind of like a
like
greyhound.
a sled dog?
No, like a greyhound. It's like a taller, thinner dog.
Okay.
I'm from Illinois, and back in the day, Southern Illinois University, I think, was a top 10 party school.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. So on Saturday, August 19th, the family planned to go shark fishing together. José had an important client who enjoyed shark fishing, so he decided to go first before taking the client so it would look like he knew what he was doing. When Kitty told the boys that they'd push their departure back to the evening, Lyle and Erik were worried that the time had changed so their parents could kill them under the cover of darkness. The boys stayed out most of the day, hoping their parents would leave without them. They were supposed to depart at 3, but when Lyle and Erik finally returned at 4, their parents were still there waiting for them. They all went to the marina together, and they arrived, I think, at about 4:30. The chartered boat was small, just 30 feet. Kitty remarked on its size as they boarded. There were 3 additional people on the boat, the captain, his friend, and a deckhand. That day the water was choppy, and both Kitty and José became seasick. For most of the trip, Kitty stayed below deck, except when there were dolphins or seals bobbing alongside the boat, and José called her to come and see them. Lyle and Erik gave their parents a wide berth and huddled together at the back of the boat. Even the captain noticed their odd behavior. He found the family distant and snooty. They didn't return to land until 11:30 p.m., so that was a long day that they were on the water.
Yeah.
And the captain said it was a little chilly and the waters were choppy and everyone was wearing shorts and the boys didn't have windbreakers on, so they were chilly and shivering and the water splashed up on them. And he thought it was odd that they didn't go below deck where Kitty was, where it was warmer, and they didn't come up to the front where he and José were fishing.
Interesting.
So they
it's
really
interesting
did.
that he would note that, yeah.
So when they returned, Kitty and José went to bed, but Lyle and Erik went out to discuss their plan. When they returned, the door was locked, and they had to wake up an angry Kitty to get inside of the house. She screamed at her sons and said that she wished they'd never been born, then went back to bed. José pounded on Erik's door and demanded he be let in, but he cowered in the corner holding his shotgun. José told him he couldn't hide forever and retreated back to the bedroom.
When I hear some of these stories, like about Kitty telling them, I wish you'd never been born, it makes me wonder, this account must be coming from them, from Lyle and Erik.
This is Lyle and Erik's retelling of the story.
Yeah, so it makes me wonder how reliable that is, just because I'm sure they were trying to cover their tracks afterwards.
Absolutely. But remember that other people had heard Kitty say, I wish I'd never had my sons.
Right.
And that's the reason why I brought up the boat captain's account, because he said, it was kind of strange that the boys just huddled in the back of the boat for 7 hours.
Yeah, so there is some independent confirmation of some of these things at least.
But you're right, it's important to remember that a lot of this is framed from their account.
Yeah.
The next morning, no one was talking. Lyle and Erik laid low. Later that night, they decided to go see a movie to get out of the house, but their parents forbid them to go out. Kitty and José went into the TV room and closed the doors. The brothers worried that their parents were plotting their deaths. They decided it was time. They gave each other a nod and retrieved their shotguns. Kitty and José had dozed off. They were jolted awake when the boys burst through the French doors, firing. Lyle shoved Erik forward, and Erik fired the first shots at Kitty. José jumped up and yelled, "No, no, no," as the bullets from Lyle's gun peppered him. Soon, the room was in ruins, thick with smoke, blood spattered across the walls and floor. Out of the corner of his eye, Lyle saw Kitty moving, trying to crawl away. He emptied his shotgun in the ambush, so he had to run to his car, where he'd stashed the extra ammunition. He loaded a single birdshot shell and headed back inside. Moments later, he fired again, delivering the fatal shot to his mother's head. Lyle and Erik stood for a moment and looked at the wreckage they'd caused. Erik shook with sobs, and Lyle carefully picked up the spent shotgun casings. They expected that a neighbor must have heard the barrage of gunfire and called the police. They waited a few minutes for them to arrive. When they didn't hear approaching sirens, they wondered if they'd gotten away with it. They decided to take their chances and escape the scene. Lyle, as usual, was in charge. He was calm, cool, and calculated, already thinking about what to do next, while Erik vacillated between sobs and stunned disbelief over what they'd done. They got into Erik's car and drove off into the night, trying to figure out a plan. Realizing they were covered in blood spatter, they changed into some of the extra clothes that Erik kept in his car for tennis practice, discarding their soiled clothing, along with the shotgun shells and a gas station dumpster. They headed to the theater, choosing License to Kill because they'd already seen it and thought it could serve as an alibi. But when they arrived, sometime after 10:30 p.m., they asked for tickets to a show that had already started. The cashier told them that the movie had started more than 20 minutes earlier and she wasn't allowed to sell tickets once a movie was that far underway. Instead, they bought tickets to Batman, a later show, hoping the time wouldn't be printed on the tickets to produce their alibi. But they never went inside. Lyle, frustrated, threw the ticket stubs in the trash. The later showtime didn't comport with the alibi that they were hoping to establish.
So they were hoping to buy tickets to a movie that had started earlier so that they could show the ticket stub and say, oh, look, we were in this movie at the time
exactly.
it happened.
If a neighbor said, oh, I heard gunshots at 9:30, they could say, oh, we were seeing the movie. So instead, Lyle and Erik wandered the streets, killing time, constructing their story, rehearsing their anguished voices for the 911 call that they knew they'd have to make. Somewhere along Mulholland Drive near Coldwater Canyon, they dumped the Mossberg shotguns, never to be seen again. Lyle and Erik only had minutes to meet their friend Perry before the Taste of LA Food Festival closed to further substantiate an alibi, but when they arrived, they were scattered and couldn't find him. Perry was already home. They called him and pleaded with him to meet them at the Cheesecake Factory for a drink. Eventually, they returned to the scene of the crime. Lyle placed the 911 call, his voice frantic, telling the dispatcher incredulously that someone had killed their parents, except he only needed to look in the mirror to see who had actually killed them. So we're going to play the 911 call. I debated about this, but you listened to it and you said you thought it added to the story.
I think it's interesting to hear their voices and to hear how they were acting at that time.
I know that some people find the calls triggering, so fast forward. How long is
about
the call?
2 minutes.
Okay, fast forward 2 minutes if you don't want to hear it.
Beverly Hills emergency?
Yes, police.
What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem?
Someone killed my parents.
Pardon me?
Someone killed my parents.
What? Who? Are they still there?
Yes.
The people...
No.
Were they shot?
Hey, man,
Were they shot?
Yes.
They were shot?
Yes.
102 response, 722 North Elmont.
What happened? Hey, stay down,
hysterical person on. We're trying to get screen further. Other units are funny. Is the person still there?
What happened? We have units around. What happened? Who shot who?
I don't hear anything. I just came home.
You came home and found who shot?
I'm mom and dad.
You know if they're still in the house, the people that did the shooting.
Get away from him.
Okay, hang on. Let me talk to Erik. Who is the person that was shot?
My mom and my dad.
Your mom and dad?
My mom and my dad.
Okay, hold on a second. Okay, we're on our way over there with the ambulance.
Okay, I gotta go.
Okay.
I think that call is really hard to listen to.
It is very hard to listen to, but now that I know they did the shooting and then they went out and came back, and now that I know that Lyle was very calm, picking up the shotgun shells and all that kind of thing, it gives me a different perspective on the call than when I listened to it before.
Right?
It's chilling, but it feels very performative now that I know that.
But two things can be true, too. I mean, he could have shot his parents, and then he could have regretted it.
Yeah.
2 hours later, he could have been like, oh, my God, what did we do?
I realized what I
They
did.
were still 18 and 21. They were really young. So I just want to point those things out. But yeah, I mean, if he is acting, he's a pretty good actor.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely sounded hysterical.
And you can hear Erik in the background. And Erik was legitimately, I think, shattered by the whole experience. For Lyle, we'll talk about this more in the future, but Lyle was the one that was always kind of raised. He was raised differently than Erik.
He was raised to hold everything together.
Exactly. He was raised to be a man and to, not have feeling. So I think that's also an important thing to point out here.
Yeah.
Lyle and Erik were questioned right away, and immediately police noticed inconsistencies in their timeline. Each time Lyle told the story, it changed slightly, while Erik nervously stood by his brother's side, remaining silent. They were taken to the Beverly Hills police station around 1 a.m. for questioning, but were clearly uncomfortable being there. When detectives announced their intention to question the brothers separately, Erik, visibly rattled, asked if Mark Heffernan, his tennis coach, or Lyle could stay with him, but officers firmly told him that wasn't possible. Shakily, he asked if his parents were dead. Yes, the detectives confirmed they were. Erik cried throughout most of his interview. He had no idea who might have wanted his parents dead, he told the police. The interview lasted only about half an hour because of his emotional state. So I know he just killed his parents, and we don't have to feel that sorry for him, but he is just 18 years old, and I don't think he realized what was going on.
He was 18, and it sounds like he was emotionally
stunted.
Yeah.
Lyle was calmer during his interview. He told investigators that Kitty had recently purchased another rifle because she'd felt unsafe in their home. Only my brother and I know this, he said, but she was on the verge of contemplating suicide. She was very edgy and suicidal in the last few years, but she seemed very stable recently. Lyle didn't think his parents were murdered as the result of a robbery. He was emphatic that José was a ruthless businessman who worked, quote, with a group of people that, from the stories that he brings home and the people that I've met, these are a real seedy group. And even though he was very aware of that, and I don't know if anyone would ever try to kill my father, but my dad is a pretty ruthless businessman and, he believes in the bottom line. He continued, I could see how he could step on a lot of toes. He was very curt. He treats my brother and I, extremely well but firm. And he's a strong disciplinarian. He holds the family together well, and, he runs the show. At work, it's the same way, he yells at a lot of people, and he's running the show, and he handles everything. I think you can tell here that Lyle is really trying to sell the mob angle. It was definitely a hit.
Mm-hmm.
José had once famously confronted Sylvester Stallone over his Rambo budget.
Well, that is a brave man to confront
right?
Sylvester
You would
Stallone.
think that the studio would be like, whatever you want, Sly.
I just because Sylvester Stallone was, pretty big, muscular guy, and I wouldn't want to make him angry at me.
Right, and probably their biggest star at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll be back after a break.
Lyle wasn't the only one who suspected José's work may have gotten him killed. As Los Angeles awoke the next morning to the news of the shocking murders, an investigator told the LA Times, "The murders stink of organized crime. They went there to take care of business and to make a message clear." Hollywood insiders later joked that hundreds of people were suddenly scrambling to get their alibis straight. José Menendez had made plenty of enemies during his career. José's employer, Live Entertainment, quickly organized a memorial service, in part to shape the media narrative and push back against early rumors of their ties to organized crime. José had worked in the entertainment and home video business during a period when certain corners of the industry were known to attract organized crime influence. There was no evidence that José himself was involved in anything illegal, but the climate of the era, combined with his reputation as a ruthless businessman, helped fuel speculation in the days after the murders. I am curious how much organized crime was involved in the film business. As you know, I'm always fascinated by the mafia and organized crime, and it would be an interesting thing to research a little bit.
We're going to talk about this a little later, but looking back on the home video industry, what videos were the first videos that became big for home entertainment? Think about it. Think about it really hard.
I don't know.
Porn.
Oh, okay.
So
gotcha.
That's why organized crime was involved.
That makes sense. On August 25th, 400 people gathered at a posh theater at the Directors Guild of America, just off the Sunset Strip, to mourn Kitty and José. An hour after the event began, Lyle and Erik pulled up in a stretch limo. Lyle delivered a lengthy eulogy, but attendees noticed that the brothers' demeanors were cold. Lyle's friend said, "I've seen him get more upset about losing a tennis match than he was about his parents' death." Eyebrows were raised when Milli Vanilli's song, "Girl, I'm Gonna Miss You," was played at the end of the service. I don't believe I'm familiar with that particular Milli Vanilli tune.
I am not surprised. That's not really your style of music, but I have been listening to it a lot on repeat ever since I watched the Netflix Monsters show. I don't even know how to describe this show. It's so wild and over the top. But this scene that we just described is the opening scene of that.
Okay.
And it is loose, like the whole Monster series is more than loosely based on their story. I'd say it's like 80% true. But this particular scene is very over the top. But that song was played at the end of the service. But it was kind of, when you go to a funeral, sometimes they're playing music. So it wasn't like, but it is funny because they were like, "Girl, I'm going to miss you," like it's for their mom.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an odd choice.
A little over the top. A lot over the top.
After family members were notified in New Jersey and Florida, they rushed to California, many interested in José's finances, curious about the will, but one couldn't be found. When a safe in the Menendez home was opened by a locksmith, jewelry and personal papers were found, but no will. The same with a safe deposit box at the bank. José, in a rage over their behavior that summer, had told his sons that he was disinheriting them. A will was eventually located in a bathroom drawer dated 1980. They were surprised to learn that they were the sole beneficiaries of the estate, which was valued at about $14 million.
Do you think this is suspicious that the will was in a bathroom drawer?
That is a very unusual place, I would think, to find a will. José had told several relatives that he was rewriting his will, and many questions remained about the validity of the will that was found in the bathroom. A document titled "Will" was found on José's hard drive, but it was inaccessible. The family, not Lyle or Erik, hired computer experts to access the hard drive, but before they could get to it, Lyle hired someone to look at the files, specifically ones named Lyle, Erik, Menendez, and Will. A man named Howard Witkin from Leviathan Development worked on the IBM computer but was unable to recover the files, although he determined that the will file only contained 54 characters. Lyle asked him to erase the hard drive because he intended to sell the computer. Well, that seems a little suspicious. Right. Wouldn't José's lawyer step forward and say, "Yes, I have the will," or "Yes, José came to me"?
I believe his lawyer said, "I don't have a will."
Okay. So maybe José didn't update it or didn't.
I think he might have been in the process of, but remember, José is 45 years old. He's a young man. He didn't have his affairs in order. He didn't believe he had a reason to.
Right. José and Kitty were laid to rest in New Jersey, with a funeral held 8 days after the murders on August 28th. 2 religious services were held, one Catholic and one Protestant. José had been a Catholic and Kitty a Protestant. Their bodies were then brought to the Princeton Chapel, where Lyle delivered a 30-minute eulogy. In his eulogy, Lyle portrayed José as a man who lived an extraordinary life, emphasizing his devotion to family legacy, success, and generational achievement. He told mourners that he and Erik would try to live up to what their father had wanted for them, and suggested that their parents would have preferred people put on a brave face, move forward, and not dwell on grief. Allegedly, Lyle told Marzi Eisenberg, José's assistant, "My father once said, 'You'll never fill my shoes.' Guess what? I'm wearing my father's shoes today."
So Marzi did say that Lyle said this, but during the trial, they actually looked back and saw that he was not wearing his father's shoes that day. He was wearing like green cowboy boots or something.
Okay.
I'm not sure why she would have made that up. So in the first couple of weeks after their parents' deaths, they both are talking about what a great man their father was and how much they admired him and loved him.
Right.
And the same with Kitty. Like, they were just emphatic how much they loved their parents.
Yeah. And do you think they were being sincere, or do you think they were trying to cover their tracks and divert suspicion from themselves?
I think both things can be true.
Yeah. Days later, Lyle hired 2 personal security guards, claiming he was afraid he was being watched by the mafia, but in reality, it was the FBI who were watching his every move. After a couple of weeks, Lyle fired the security guards. He told them that his uncle had smoothed things over with the mafia, pleading for his and Erik's safety. The brothers continued to present as opposites. Lyle appeared confident and strong in the aftermath of his parents' murders, freely speaking with the media who hovered nearby, while Erik was visibly suffering, plagued by stomach aches and nightmares. He was staying with Henry Yanio, a male cousin 20 years older, with a family of his own in the San Fernando Valley. Some nights, Erik was so haunted he would crawl into Henry's bed with him. 3 days after the murders, the brothers went to buy sports coats at the mall for the memorial service. While there, they made an impulsive stop at Slavic's Jewelers and bought 3 Rolex watches and 2 money clips for just under $17,000. They used José's Platinum American Express card. The employee called American Express to make sure the sale was authorized. The sale did clear. Lyle and Erik had access to their parents' $250,000 credit limit. In the months after the murder, afraid to return to the mansion, the brothers stayed at expensive hotels and flew freely between the coasts. It would take years to settle Kitty and José's estate, but José's $650,000 life insurance policy quickly got paid out. Lyle bought a $64,000 Porsche 911 Carrera. Erik had more frugal tastes, buying a Jeep Wrangler for $15,000. He also secured his tennis coach, Mark, offering him a salary of $60,000 a year.
I think this scene here that we're painting is what people remember most about the Menendez brothers.
Yeah.
Is they did go on this crazy spending spree, and it wasn't just cars, it was, clothes and audio, video equipment. They did kind of go crazy.
Not a good look. Lyle bought his favorite Princeton, New Jersey chicken wing spot, Chuck's Spring Street Cafe, for $550,000. He renamed it Mr. Buffalo's with plans to expand to the West Coast. He told Princeton's Town Topics newspaper that he wanted the restaurant to have a Midwestern motif centered around health food and buffalo wings. The two go together hand in hand.
I had to include that quote because I was like, health food and buffalo wings. What? I know. What a great idea.
In a Midwestern motif, no less.
I've seen pictures of this restaurant, and it's still there, and it has really good reviews. But it looks like a little hole-in-the-wall place. So I'm kind of surprised that it was $550,000.
Lyle decided not to return to Princeton, choosing instead to focus on becoming a businessman like his father. Upon abandoning his pursuit of a Princeton degree, he said, "I would love to get the education, but I can't justify postponing my dreams." Erik also deferred college, opting not to attend UCLA that fall, instead turning his focus to his tennis career. In the months after the murders, it was estimated that the brothers spent more than $1 million.
But half of that was on the business.
Relatives urged them to slow down, warning that the inheritance wouldn't last forever. Still, many of those same family members viewed the extravagant purchases less as reckless spending and more as a coping strategy, a way to spend, distract themselves, and blunt their grief. The mansion had been repaired, but the brothers were too traumatized to live there. Instead, they rented an apartment together in Marina del Rey. They turned it into a real bachelor pad.
All right, buckle up. I'm about to take you on a little bit of a ride.
Okay.
Do you remember Dr. Jerome Oziel?
I remember that was Erik's therapist.
Well, after they were arrested for the burglaries, they were forced to go see him. And I think it was mostly Erik, but Lyle did see him as well. I think they might have had some family therapy with Dr. Oziel too. But remember, Dr. Oziel had signed some waiver that he would share.
Oh, he would share everything with José.
He would share everything with José.
Right.
Weeks after his parents' murders, Erik continued to be haunted by nightmares of their deaths, violent, intrusive dreams that jolted him awake and left him soaked in sweat, his heart racing. In his waking hours, he was raw and unmoored, swinging between panic and numbness, barely functioning, not eating, unraveling. He and Lyle had seen the psychotherapist Dr. Jerome Oziel years earlier when they'd gotten into trouble for the burglaries. Erik called Oziel the day before Halloween and requested the last appointment for the day. He didn't want to be seen by anyone in the office, he explained. Oziel had seen the news, and he had a suspicion that the brothers knew more than they were telling the police. He had actually gone to see them several times at the Beverly Hills hotel where they were staying, but he hadn't seen them since the funeral. So I think he saw them. He went to see them at least 3 times just to check on them, and each time he billed them.
Okay.
So Erik arrived on time for the appointment. He spent an hour with the doctor talking about his parents and what a great man his father was. Then he asked if they could take a walk together. That's when Erik blurted out, "We did it." Erik later explained why he felt the need to confess. "I was having trouble telling him about why I was suicidal, since I hadn't told him that I killed my parents, and he wasn't really getting it, so I just decided that I needed to tell somebody, and I decided to tell him right then. I really wanted him at that point to tell me that I wasn't a bad person, and he couldn't do that unless he knew that I killed my parents." Erik described the murders as the perfect crime. Oziel promised Erik that whatever he said to him was confidential. Oziel asked Erik if Lyle knew he was there. Erik said no. Oziel was so concerned about how Lyle might react to finding out Erik was in his office that he later said he feared for Erik's life, but more likely he was fearful for his own life.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oziel then called the Menendez mansion. Lyle and his girlfriend, Jamie, were there handing out Halloween candy. When Oziel asked him to come to the office, Lyle understood immediately what it meant. He got in his car and raced there. It was about 6:30 p.m. This is where things are a little foggy because we have differing accounts. Do you remember Judalon Smith from part 1,
I
Oziel's
remember the
mistress?
name, but I don't remember much about her.
Okay, well, she claims that she was in the waiting room, but Oziel doesn't know if she's there or not. This is one point that is contested between them. She claims that she was there and overheard what was said in the office, but Jerry said that he had no knowledge of her presence, and he hadn't called her and asked her to be there. He was with the brothers for over 4 hours, and he said that she could have slipped in at some point and been there without his knowledge. When Lyle arrived, Oziel invited him into the office and asked him to sit down. "Your brother has told me everything," he simply stated. Lyle blew up at Erik. Oziel described his demeanor and words as very threatening. Later, Oziel and Smith testified under oath that Lyle said, "Now I hope you know what we're going to have to do. We've got to kill him and anyone associated with him."
Him meaning Erik?
No, Oziel.
Oh, gotcha.
Hours later, after Lyle and Erik left, Oziel thought he was in danger. He called his wife and told her that she and the children needed to leave town. Then he made several other calls, uncertain of how to approach the situation and stay safe. He called another psychologist who suggested that he leave a detailed account of what had transpired and put it in multiple safe deposit boxes. Oziel thought that he could diffuse the situation between Lyle and Erik and called them and convinced them to come back for another session on November 2nd. While his wife left their home, he stayed with Judalon for several days, although he insisted that she wasn't his girlfriend. Oziel later said that Lyle showed clear sociopathic traits. He feared that he could kill again, either himself or even Erik. In contrast, Oziel said that Erik showed remorse over his parents' death. And I'm not sure if Oziel recorded one or both of these sessions, but there were several audio tapes of their sessions in his possession, one with a clear confession.
Okay.
Oziel purchased 3 shotguns, one for himself, one for his wife, and one for Judalon. So Erik confided in Oziel that he'd been thinking of killing his father for a month. He began thinking that life would be easier without him breathing down his neck all the time. And remember when José had said, you're not going to live in the dorms, you're going to stay at home.
Yeah.
I think that was a big turning point for Erik when he realized that even though he was 18, his father
wasn't going to get out from under his thumb.
And really, it was really unfair. I think that he was a fairly good student. I think he was a B student. And Lyle got to go away.
Yeah.
Lyle got to stay at Princeton and, fly back and forth between New Jersey and California. Why wasn't Erik given that same freedom?
Yeah, I could totally see that Erik would view that as a double standard.
Yeah. So Kitty would surely turn them in, so Lyle and Erik knew that they needed to kill her too. They didn't think that she would survive without José. Later, prosecutors would argue that Erik had been influenced by the made-for-TV miniseries The Billionaire Boys Club, a dramatization of real crimes involving wealthy young men and murder, a claim the defense disputed, and there's actually no proof that Erik has ever seen the movie. I'm thinking about doing that case in the future because it's a very interesting case. Around Thanksgiving, the mother of one of Erik's closest friends, Craig Signorelli, contacted the police through her attorney. She told him that she had reason to believe Lyle and Erik had murdered their parents.
So this is now, about 3 months or so after their parents died? And were the police not suspecting Lyle and Erik at this point?
No, remember they were, 2 weeks on, they were pretty sure that they had something to do with it.
Okay, they're just taking their time.
They're taking their time, and we have to remember that these things take time a lot. And if they rush to make an arrest, a lot of times it'll fall through and there's not enough evidence. And
you only got one shot at it, so you better do it right.
Exactly. When the Menendez family moved to Calabasas, California from New Jersey in 1987, Erik and Craig became fast friends after playing together on their high school tennis team. Erik desperately missed Lyle, who was in New Jersey, and his friendship with Craig quickly deepened in a way few others had. Together, they took long drives along California's scenic, winding highways. They viewed themselves as more introspective than their peers, playing chess for hours while having long conversations, but they also dabbled in screenwriting. In one screenplay called Friends, 18-year-old Hamilton Cromwell murders his sleeping parents to inherit their $157 million fortune. Kitty even typed the 62-page screenplay for him.
Wow.
Here's one seemingly autobiographical passage about Hamilton's father. Sometimes he would tell me that I was not worthy to be his son. When he did that, it would make me strive harder, just so I could hear the words, "I love you, son." And I never heard those words.
Wow. I can't imagine how Kitty must have felt typing that
She was
out.
probably, oh yeah, I'll help you, I'll do this.
I guess.
I want to point out here, too, that the $157 million fortune that the Cromwell family allegedly had, Erik and Lyle thought that their parents had more than the $14 million estate. It was estimated that they thought the estate, they would inherit much more than the $14 million, which should have been plenty, really. Erik hoped that José would read the script and get it into the right hands, but there's no evidence that he ever read it. About 12 days after the murders, Craig went to check on Erik at the Menendez mansion, worried about him. He could see that Erik was unraveling. Eventually, Erik told his best friend the truth, that he and Lyle were responsible. Craig later testified that he was stunned and unsure at first whether Erik was serious, but he kept talking, insisting it was real, insisting it had happened. Unsure what to do, Craig went home and told his mother, who then contacted the police. Actually, this timeline tells me that he must not have told her right away, or she didn't tell the police right away.
Yeah.
While at Princeton, Lyle had also met a new best friend, Donovan Goodrow. Donovan, a California native, was a rather shady guy living out of his truck. He told Lyle that he'd be attending Princeton the following year, although he wasn't, he never even applied. Lyle invited him to move into his suite. One night over dinner, Donovan confided to Lyle that he'd been sexually abused as a child at the house of a friend, prompting Lyle to share his own painful experience of abuse. He told Donovan that his father had sexually abused him and Erik since they were small boys, and they often shared baths or showers together. The living arrangement lasted 2 months. When cash and other valuables went missing, Lyle's roommates packed up his belongings and forced Donovan out. In their hurry to oust him, the suite mates forgot to pack Donovan's wallet, which he never came back for. Lyle wouldn't see this friend again until years later at his murder trial. So we mentioned Donovan in part 1. Do you remember?
I don't know.
When they purchased the shotguns, they used his ID. So this ID that was left behind.
Gotcha.
Lyle had pocketed
Interesting.
it. Yeah.
We'll be back after a break. After José and Kitty's death, police quickly noted that the front door was open with no signs of forced entry, and the security system was unarmed. Nothing was taken from the home. One thing that stood out was that despite the number of shots, somewhere between 15 and 20, there were no shotgun casings found. They must have been picked up by the shooter, which is not something a hired hitman would take the time to do. That's interesting because my first thought was that that would be something a hired hitman would do, but I guess there's no reason for it, right?
No.
I mean, the evidence, shotgun shells aren't going to be really important evidence in most cases. Within a week, the Beverly Hills Police Department honed in on Lyle and Erik as suspects. Although there was no direct evidence tying them to the crime scene, their behavior was suspicious, and police didn't believe it was a mob hit.
Live Entertainment, who José was working for at the time, they even thought that it could be a mob hit.
After he learned of Kitty and José's murders, Donovan Goudreau, Lyle's former best friend and roommate, reached out to the lead detective in the case, Les Zoller. Zoller had also investigated the Billionaire Boys Club. After Craig Signorelli's mother contacted police, they asked him if he would wear a wire to try to coerce a confession from Erik. He agreed. They met at Gladstone's along the Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu for dinner. But now that Signorelli was wearing a wire, Erik was closed off. Craig said, "You already told me you did it." Erik bristled. "Don't fuck with that anymore. You know I didn't kill my parents. There's no way I could have ever done that." Erik said that he thought it was a hit by the mafia or even Fidel Castro. He'd pay $1 million to catch the killer. Over dinner, they talked about making their own fortunes. Erik said they should focus on becoming senators one day. Do you think Erik suspected that Craig was wearing a wire?
I wonder if maybe Craig could have tipped Erik off.
Oh, maybe. After Craig failed to get a confession, he whispered into the wire, "Well, I guess that didn't help much, huh?" In January, police raided the Signorelli's home looking for anything related to the Menendez murders. Furious at the police after he'd been so accommodating, Craig faxed the following missive to the Beverly Hills Police Department. "Fate and circumstance sometimes forge unexpected allies. As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. Betrayal signifies evil. Living is an art, necessitating tact, not fueled by greed. This you shall suffer from ignorance. You are not to be trusted." And as they looked out over their empire, they were saddened, for there were no more lands left to conquer. Hamilton Cromwell.
Okay, good job reading that word salad. Hamilton Cromwell, does that
That was the
make...
character in the screenplay that
You're
they
so
wrote.
smart sometimes, yes. So I think this is just...
That is a very strange
I know,
message.
I have no idea what he was trying to say. I actually read it through ChatGPT and I was like, what does this mean?
Mhm.
But I don't blame him for being angry. It was pretty underhanded that the police raided his house.
Yeah, why
he was
would they
cooperating.
raid? That
He
seems
probably
odd.
felt like he might be holding something back.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, that message it just sounds a little sort of unhinged in a way.
Mm-hmm.
In December, Judalon Smith had a severe reaction to a new antidepressant. She called Jerry Oziel to take her to the hospital. Afterward, she was badly shaken and didn't want to be alone. Jerry and his wife Laurel, who according to accounts did not know about the affair, allowed Judalon to stay overnight in their housekeeper's room until she felt better.
So Laurel Oziel is also a psychotherapist.
Okay.
And I guess at this time, she thought that Judalon was just a patient of Jerry's, which later on he would say, "Oh, she was never a patient of mine," because, that would be really bad to have an affair with the patient, right? So do you remember the movie What About Bob? Or do I have the name right?
That's the one with Bill Murray and Richard Dreyfuss.
And
where Bill Murray develops kind of a fixation on his therapist and wants to be his friend. And
to me, this situation kind of sounds like that. Judalon keeps reaching out to Jerry for help, and he says, oh, we're not involved. She's not my girlfriend. But clearly there is some attachment there.
Yeah. Judilon was in a fragile state. At times, she was suicidal. At others, she became volatile, threatening to go to the police with what she knew about Lyle and Erik. She used that knowledge as leverage to remain in the Oziel's home. What happened during that period is disputed. Oziel later said the relationship was over. Judilon claimed they were still romantically involved and that they had sex during her stay in the house. Judilon appeared to enjoy being in the Oziel home and spending time with the children. Some accounts have alleged that she behaved inappropriately toward the youngest daughter, even suggesting she implied she could become a new mommy. Weeks turned into months, and Smith remained in the house. Oziel's wife, Laurel, later said the situation became so disruptive that the family felt held hostage by Smith's presence. She also said Judilon overstepped boundaries in the home, even rearranging furniture while they were at work. Judilon later claimed that Jerry had controlled her, held her hostage, abused her physically, and even sexually assaulted her. In March, when she was asked to leave, the Oziels alleged that she threatened to murder Jerry and his family. But this is hard to believe because he continued to see her. In a late-night phone call before the trial, Oziel told Smith, "We're going to be stars, not exactly for the right reasons." Although stars wasn't the right word, he wasn't wrong. People were interested in the bizarre coupling. Later, in court, Judilon revealed that she had once given Jerry an IOU for 500 sex acts that was signed by two witnesses, her cats, Shanti and Ishi Kitty. I'm not sure an IOU signed by cats would be legally binding.
Well, I'm positive that she later rescinded that IOU because their relationship deteriorated pretty quickly. And it's fun to laugh at Judilon because she is like a quirky lady, but I believe her account, really. She was a beautiful lady and she was a little quirky. But Jerry is a piece of garbage, and he can't be trusted. And I do think that he might have wanted her at his house to control her because he didn't want her to go to the police.
Okay.
In March 1990, when Lyle heard that two detectives from the Beverly Hills Police Department visited Mr. Buffalo asking about him, he became very nervous, even hiring another bodyguard. For 6 months, he'd been under the impression that he and Erik had committed the perfect crime, but the walls were closing in on him. Days later, law enforcement got the break it had been waiting for. On March 6th, Judilon Smith met with detectives and a Los Angeles County Deputy District Attorney for 6 hours. She told them that she had overheard the Menendez brothers confessing to Jerome Oziel and that she could lead them to a recording of it. 2 days later, a search warrant was executed on the Oziel's home. They were looking for 6 audio tapes from the Menendez sessions, along with Jerry's appointment diary and the keys to his safe deposit boxes. Laurel Oziel called Jerry and told him to come home immediately. Unsure what to do, he contacted his attorney and the American Psychological Association for guidance. He was told to cooperate. In cases like this involving potential doctor-patient confidentiality, a special court-appointed attorney is present during the search to review the evidence to determine what is legally admissible and to protect anything that must remain privileged.
That's really interesting. 'Cause I would think if you had audio tapes of your session with your psychiatrist or psychologist, that would be confidential, right? Because it's something you're saying in this session.
Yes, you're right, and that is a question that remains in this case.
Interesting.
Lyle Menendez was arrested in front of his parents' mansion on March 8, 1990. 15 officers in bulletproof vests with guns drawn pulled him from Erik's Jeep and threw him to the ground, handcuffing him as his 2 friends looked on, stunned. Erik was competing in a tennis tournament in Israel, but as soon as he heard the news, he and his coach, Mark Heffernan, returned to the U.S. to surrender to police. When he landed at LAX at 2 a.m., detectives were waiting to arrest him. He was relieved there were no TV cameras to document the moment. He asked not to be handcuffed, but officers told him it was necessary. He was then taken downtown and booked. Lyle and Erik had strong support from both sides of their family, except for 2 of Kitty's brothers, Brian and Mort. Many attended their first hearing on March 12th. Their grandmother, Maria, even suggested to her daughter, Marta, that they should hire people to break Erik and Lyle out of jail, no matter the cost, because they were unjustly being held. She said she wanted to take them somewhere far away where they would never have to expose the secrets of the Menendez family.
That's
So
an
that's
intriguing
interesting,
little
right?
nugget. Yeah.
Lyle and Erik were each charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Included were 3 special circumstances that made them eligible for the death penalty: lying in wait, multiple murders, and murder for financial gain. They were denied bail. So it's interesting that the charge, murder for financial gain, which everyone thinks that's why they murdered their parents, they were not indicted on that charge.
Okay.
The grand jury found that there was not enough evidence for that charge.
Interesting.
2 weeks later, at their arraignment hearing, they pleaded not guilty. They were criticized for appearing almost jovial with their legal team, smiling, laughing, and in the public's eyes, behaving in ways that didn't match the gravity of the charges. Robert Shapiro, one of OJ's high-profile attorneys, initially represented the brothers, but he was replaced by Leslie Abramson, who had an especially close bond with Erik. Jill Lansing, a friend of Abramson's, was named as Lyle's attorney. Despite their confession to Oziel, there was strikingly little evidence directly tying the brothers to the crime, in part because of errors made by the Beverly Hills Police Department on the night of the murders. Remember that they hadn't searched their cars, or they would have found the ammunition, and they had never done the gunshot residue test, which it would have been positive.
Yeah.
And if investigators had looked into their movie alibi and they'd gone to the theater and talked to anyone that worked there, they actually had an argument with the person that was, selling tickets. And I'm sure she would have remembered and said, oh yeah, they, never really saw a movie.
Yeah.
If a judge ruled that Oziel's tapes were inadmissible because, like you pointed out,
doctor-patient confidentiality.
Yeah, the prosecution's case would be in serious trouble. What followed was months, then years of legal fighting over whether those recordings could ever be heard by a jury. The defense argued that psychotherapist patient privilege should protect them and signaled early on that they were prepared to challenge any adverse ruling all the way up to the California Supreme Court. Ultimately, that's exactly where the battle ended. California's High Court ruled that key portions of the tapes could be admitted into evidence, a decision that fundamentally shaped how the trial would unfold. In the early 1990s, news was shifting from print to 24-hour cable coverage, and the world's fixation with true crime was just beginning to take hold. With the launch of court TV, courtrooms were now open to cameras. Trials were no longer summarized on the evening news. They were broadcast, dissected, and consumed in real time by an increasingly hungry audience. The Menendez case arrived at the front edge of that transformation. Just before O.J. and Nicole Brown Simpson, defendants became celebrities. Audiences debated guilt and innocence, not behind closed doors in a courthouse, but at the water cooler and around kitchen tables. And with that shift came a new ethical dilemma. Voyeurism crept in, and real grief became content. From the beginning, much of the coverage framed the brothers not as potential victims of long-term abuse, but as spoiled Beverly Hills brats who had murdered their parents for money. Once that narrative took hold, nearly every detail was filtered through it. When the sexual abuse allegations emerged, they were often treated less as serious claim and more as a shocking twist or a convenient defense strategy. The Menendez trial didn't just reflect public fascination with crime, it helped define an era that turned it into entertainment, turning a complex family tragedy into a story that the public felt entitled to watch, judge, and consume, and paving the way for pesky true crime podcasters.
I know, as you were reading through this, I was like, boy,
yeah, we definitely have
taking this a little personally.
Yeah, we definitely have some guilt there. Adjustment to life in jail wasn't easy for the brothers, especially Erik. He was only 19 and felt very vulnerable. He couldn't eat or sleep. After razor blades were found in his cell, he was put in solitary confinement. Lyle was not allowed to mix with general population. He was considered a high-risk inmate.
So I'm assuming there was no bail offered because of the crimes that they committed or allegedly committed.
In June 1990, a 17-page letter was intercepted by jail guards written to Erik from Lyle. The letter outlined a potential escape plan and discussed altering their appearance, obtaining new passports, and countries without extradition treaties. The letter explicitly told Erik to dispose of it, but he couldn't part with it. He hid it inside his mattress. In one passage, Lyle wrote, "We alone know the secrets of our family's past. I do not look forward to broadcasting them around the country. I pray that it never has to happen. If it were not for you, I doubt I'd even try for manslaughter. I would rather try and escape or die. I struggle with my belief that men take responsibility. Pleading abuse is not taking responsibility." So in this letter, again, we have this nugget about family secrets. And he's willing to die rather than to divulge those secrets.
Yeah, that's interesting. And when he says, I doubt I would even try for manslaughter, he's saying he wouldn't
So
even...
they know that they are not going to be acquitted. So the lightest sentence they could get is manslaughter.
Would be manslaughter. Gotcha.
Exactly. The letter's discovery prompted changes in how the brothers were monitored and housed, with authorities realizing there was a potential risk allowing the brothers to spend time together. In the months that followed, Lyle and Erik were visited by a parade of attorneys. One of them, a young lawyer named Steve Goldberg, had been handling matters related to the estate and gradually earned their trust. It was to him they turned when they decided they wanted to confess. They asked Goldberg to help facilitate the confession. First, they wanted to speak to their family to explain how things had become untenable for them with their parents and how they'd been long-standing victims of sexual abuse. For Lyle, the sexual abuse stopped when he was 8. But for Erik, it started when he was 6 and never stopped until his father's death. The brothers had rarely talked to each other about the abuse they'd suffered until days before the murders. Remember, after the toupee was ripped off?
Right.
That's when they allegedly had, the discussion, and Lyle realized that Erik had been being abused this whole time.
Right.
Their family was forgiving and supportive, and they said that they'd known that something was amiss with the family, except, again, for Kitty's 2 brothers, everyone was behind them. During pretrial preparations, a forensic psychologist conducted extensive evaluations of both brothers. He concluded that their emotional development lagged far behind their chronological ages, placing Erik at roughly 8 to 12 and Lyle closer to 12 to 14. He believed that they were raised in a home marked by violence, emotional deprivation, and extreme unrealistic expectations. Throughout their sessions, he found them guarded and withdrawn, with a sense that they were concealing something significant. It was not until his 26th meeting with Erik that a core trauma was finally disclosed. Erik revealed that his father had been abusing him from a very young age. He and Lyle had made a pact never to reveal the abuse, the dark family secret that had been gnawing at them for most of their lives. Erik confided in the psychologist that Lyle was set against ever revealing the abuse he'd suffered, determined to bring it to his grave. Just days before the trial was set to begin, the story broke. The media learned of the brothers' allegations of sexual abuse by their father and their mother's alleged indifference and substance abuse disorder, and the defense's plan to center its case on self-defense rooted in the abuse that they said they had endured.
I have a couple of questions for you about this. So this forensic psychologist, do we know if this person was hired by the defense to conduct this evaluation, or was it somebody hired by the state?
Yeah, that's a really good question and an important question to ask. I am not sure. They were seen by a barrage of therapists. So I'm not sure who, hired who. I think some were hired by the state. I think some were more objective. And I think there were definitely some hired by the defense too.
Yeah.
But I feel like what this psychotherapist is saying really makes sense to me. We talked about this before, how if you're being abused, you cannot grow.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense as well. But
because Lyle was abused, his abuse stopped earlier. I mean, the sexual abuse, not the other,
more the
situations.
Mental abuse,
So it does make sense that he would have been able to mature a little more.
It does.
I don't know. Do you buy into this?
I'm just always a little cynical, especially when it comes to like expert witnesses, because as we've seen over and over, you can hire someone to say almost anything. And so I just always have a little bit of my guard up about these type of things, but it does make sense. I mean, it does match up with kind of what we've learned about Lyle and Erik. My other question is whether we know who leaked this story, because it's pretty self-serving for the defense, I would think.
I am pretty sure that Leslie Abramson. Do you know who Leslie Abramson is? You probably know the name.
I can picture her in my head. She has like really kind of crazy hair, right?
Yeah, she's 4'9", but she has at least like 4 inches, just with her hair. But yeah, she is.
Yeah,
something else.
She knows how to work the media, so
She really does. Yeah. So I believe that she probably released this. Does it surprise you that the brothers had so much family support behind them, except for Mort and Brian?
It does surprise me. And when you said that, it made me wonder, because it made me wonder if they were more concerned about family secrets getting out than and reputation and things like that. Because it seems like Jose was all about, appearances and reputation, right? He did his.
I mean, a lot of families would feel that in the, the same situation.
But it just sort of matches up with the family dynamics of Jose doing his kids' homework for them because he was more concerned about them getting a good grade.
Absolutely. Appearance is everything with Jose.
Yeah, so it does surprise me that they were behind them, but it also makes me wonder about their motives for being behind them.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe that Erik's grief is genuine?
I do.
Yeah, he really seems tortured, doesn't he?
Yeah, he seems really tortured, and because of his emotional immaturity, as we've talked about, I do believe his growth was stunted emotionally, and yeah, it seems like he was very upset legitimately.
Something that I keep thinking about is the brothers thought they committed the perfect crime, but they really didn't.
No.
Like, they got lucky because, the gunshot residue, if nothing else,
right,
that definitely would have came up positive. And it was August, warm, windows are open, and the houses are spread pretty far apart.
Yeah.
But if there's 20 gunshots
it
coming from your
surprising
neighbor's
that no
house.
one heard that, yeah.
Well, I think people did hear it, but it's Beverly Hills, so people, kind of
mind their own business. So, yeah,
exactly. And they waited for a few minutes before they left because they're like, "Oh, the police are going to come because someone." And so I don't really think they obviously did not commit the perfect crime.
No, I think they probably just felt like that after 6 months or whatever went by and no one arrested them. They probably thought, "Oh, we are, getting off scot-free."
Yeah. Do you think you can write off the spending as a trauma response?
I guess a little bit. I mean, I just think, even before their parents were killed, they were kind of entitled, right? And it just sort of seemed like a little bit maybe trauma response and a little bit of like, woohoo, we're free. We can just do whatever we want now.
That's what it appears. But remember, they were not indicted on that charge of excessive spending or killing for financial gain.
Yeah.
And they did have access. They both had their father's credit card. And I do believe that there was abuse in the family, but it was never financial abuse. I think that their parents were financially generous with them.
Yeah.
Again, it had something to do with, reputation, and they wanted their kids to be well-dressed and, have the best of everything.
Yeah.
Although Erik drove, I believe, a Ford Escort, and Lyle had this Alfa Romeo Spider, which I vaguely remember what that looks like, but I have to believe that was probably an expensive car.
Yeah. Also, just if you think about any 18 and 21-year-old kid that suddenly has, essentially unlimited access to a credit card and money, it's not that surprising that they would have gone on a spending spree like that either.
Yeah, definitely. This is a hard question, but why do you think they killed Kitty? Why didn't they just kill Jose?
Oh, that is a hard question.
Because a lot of people would point to, well, if Kitty was alive, she would have inherited the fortune and they wouldn't have gotten anything.
Right. I can't remember what you said they told, or Erik told his friend Craig that they had to kill Kitty because she would have been a witness, or?
Well, that was one thing that people point to, like she would have been a witness to the crime, but also they pictured Kitty as fragile and weak. And remember, she has substance abuse disorder and, she's kind of obsessed with her husband.
Yeah.
And they were saying she wouldn't have survived without him. But I would like to say she also could have thrived without her husband.
Right. She was pretty miserable, but she felt like she kind of had to stay with him in some ways, right? She felt a little bit stuck.
Well, remember her childhood. She had seen what her mother went through with her divorce. And she said, that's not going to be me. I'm going to, save my marriage, which a lot of women think is the way to go.
Yeah. But the real question is, could Lyle and Erik have legitimately thought that? And yeah, I think they could have legitimately thought that she might not be able to get by without Jose around, or that she wouldn't want to be around.
Do you think that Lyle and Erik were treated differently because they were two wealthy boys from Beverly Hills rather than, two guys from any other place?
I don't know. I mean, you're talking about like the fact that they didn't do a gunshot residue test on them right away and things like that.
They let Erik go because he was crying, and they were just nice to them. They were sympathetic, and they didn't, cuff them right away. They didn't question them. They didn't interrogate them. They questioned them.
To me, it feels more like incompetence than bias, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
I think it was both. I think
Maybe.
that they let them off a little easy
Mm-hmm.
because they were, two rich white kids.
I guess, but it just seems like if the police had any suspicion that Lyle and Erik might have done this, that they would have done those things.
But that's also a privilege, right?
I suppose maybe they didn't suspect because, well, why would these two wealthy boys kill their parents, maybe?
We still have a lot to talk about, but I promise we will wrap it all up in part 3. So please come back.
I will.
Well, I just looked out the window and it is still snowing.
Yeah, it sure is.
I think we were on just the edge of the storm, and we ended up getting a little more than they originally anticipated. But yesterday, after we recorded part 1, we went out and
We went to see a movie.
We went to see a movie. We saw Hamnet,
Mm-hmm.
which it was a good cinematic experience. I think I was already feeling a little morose, so
Yeah, it was very.
it was dark.
sad and dark.
Yeah.
And you had read the book, right?
I read the book and I liked the book. I preferred the book to the movie. I
Yeah.
thought the book was a little more poetic. It was beautifully written,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it told the story of Hamnet better.
Did it?
Yeah.
I went into the movie not really knowing anything about it, and so I have to admit I was a little bit confused. I didn't know. I honestly, I don't want to spoil anything for people, but I didn't know that
It was based on Hamlet.
Well, I didn't know that the father was William Shakespeare until more than halfway through the movie. I kind of started putting two and two
writing
together.
plays in the theater.
I didn't even realize he was writing plays. I'm just so
Okay.
slow sometimes. I thought,
when he was up at night scrawling things.
well, I knew that.
Okay.
But then I thought when he went to London, he was there making gloves or something. And I didn't hear them ever mention him writing plays until close to the end. So I'm a little bit slow. But I thought it was a beautiful movie. It was very cinematic, the cinematography
It's
was
just a little
just
overwrought.
beautiful.
And I would like to see a really funny movie. I feel like we're not making as many comedies as we used to. Maybe they're just not on my radar. I don't know.
What kind of comedy are you looking for? Like Bridesmaids? I know that's one of your favorites. Something like
Bridesmaids is one of my favorites. Or even more boy funny movies, I don't know.
Old school. The Hangover.
Sure. Or something about Mary. I don't know. I just feel like there hasn't been really. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe we've just missed them. I don't know. But yeah, we haven't seen anything like that in quite a while.
Yeah, when life feels heavy, you just want to laugh sometimes.
True.
But I have a bone to pick with you.
With me? How could that be?
Well, because we knew it was going to snow, and because it's so cold, the salt isn't. The roads haven't been
still not great, yeah.
for a couple of weeks. But we went to the grocery store because, we knew we weren't going to go out. And the number one rule of snow days is calories don't count.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't let me buy any good snacks. We bought 0 good snacks. We bought lettuce and bananas and what else? You were like, we don't need that.
I would like to remind
you
that you are an adult, and
You forbid it right there in the grocery store.
I did.
I have
not.
witnesses at the Meijer. He was like, "Girl, put that down. You don't need that."
That is absolutely 100% not
well,
true.
thank God for
all.
Alicia and her lovely snacks from Buc-ee's, or this girl.
I know you would be going hungry.
No, it just cracked me
sad.
up because you totally did the "we have food at home" thing, which our kids would say. If there's one thing I do right as a mom, it's I'm pretty good at snacks.
Oh yes,
and
you were very good.
If there's a snow day, you need homemade cookies usually.
Yeah, well,
I am gonna make cookies later for someone's special's birthday.
Yeah,
so we will have some cookies. So I'm just teasing you. You didn't forbid it, but you were not very much fun. And then on the way home, we were gonna stop and get something, and then you were like, "Oh, we don't need." So anyway.
I just wasn't hungry.
Yeah, I know. If you're not hungry, I guess I could.
know.
Oh, you did offer to stop, but
I know.
who wants to eat bad, unhealthy fast food by themselves? It's
Yeah,
definitely
that's
a
true.
group experience.
Well,
you need everyone in the car to want McDonald's, not just one person.
I am so sorry. I did not.
But I came home and had an apple, and I'm
Oh well, yeah.
really thrilled that.
What more would you have wanted?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for listening. If you would like to listen to part 3 right now, you can join us on patreon.com/lovemarrykill. We have one tier, and for that you get early ad-free access. And when we do multi-part episodes, you get to hear them all at once rather
you get
than
it
waiting.
all for one tier for $5 a month.
That's
what
right.
a bargain. We are so grateful for everyone's support.
Please rate, review, follow, and subscribe. Find us on social media or send us an email at lovemarykill@gmail.com. We love to hear from you.
Now you can find us on YouTube and Reddit. Really quick before we go, if
Reddit? You can't find us on Reddit. You can find us on TikTok.
Oh. That's what I meant to say. I mean, you can find us on Reddit, but don't look too hard because you might find some negative things out there. I don't really know. I haven't checked it in a long time. But sometimes we're getting a lot more messages, and sometimes I have a hard time keeping up with them. So don't feel bad if you have to resend an email or resend a comment, because my intent is to respond to all of them, but sometimes they get a little lost.
Yeah.
So until next time.
Don't kill your wife.
And don't kill your husband.